Ah, look who's still standing. Look who's still breathing after the longest psychological warfare campaign in modern history. 5 years, 1,825 days, 43,800 hours of letting them believe they won, letting them celebrate, letting them toast to your downfall, while you sat in the shadows, sharpening every single blade they ever tried to use against you. Welcome back, you beautiful architect of revenge. Welcome back, you patient masterminds who understood something they never could. That sometimes the most powerful move in the game is letting your opponent think there's no game at all. You didn't lose for 5 years. You invested. You didn't fail for 5 years. You studied. You didn't disappear for 5 years. You became something they have no defense against, no explanation for, no strategy to counter. And now they're starting to feel it. Aren't they? That subtle shift in the air when you walk into a room. That uncomfortable silence when your name comes up in conversation. That nervous laughter when someone asks what you've been up to, because how do they explain what they're witnessing? How do they put into words that the person they buried 5 years ago just walked back in wearing their funeral as a crown? They can't. They won't. They'll just watch. And you magnificent anomaly, you're going to let them. Because this wasn't about proving them wrong. This was about letting them prove themselves exactly who they always were, while you became someone they could never predict, never contain, never understand. 5 years ago, they thought they'd deleted you from the narrative. They thought they wrote you out of the story, but what they didn't realize is that you weren't a chapter in their book. You were writing an entirely different novel. And they were just extras in your origin story. Let's talk about what really happened during those 5 years, shall we? Because the version they tell themselves, the one where they won, where they moved on, where they forgot about you, that's the fairy tale they needed to sleep at night. But you and I both know the truth. They never stopped watching. They never stopped checking. They never stopped wondering what you were doing in that silence, in that absence, in that deliberate void you created. Every 6 months, someone would casually bring up your name, just to see if anyone had intel. Every birthday that passed, someone would check if you posted anything. Every major life event in their circle, someone would pause and think, I wonder if they know about this. I wonder if they care. They told themselves they were over it, that they'd moved on, that you were irrelevant. But irrelevant people don't occupy mental real estate for half a decade. Irrelevant people don't get brought up in therapy sessions 5 years later. You know what you did during those 5 years? You became fluent in every language they used to manipulate you. You learned every pattern they ran, every tactic they employed, every emotional game they played. You didn't just heal from what they did, you studied it like a doctoral thesis. You broke down every betrayal into data point. You analyzed every lie until you could see the truth 3 sentences before they even spoke it. You transformed every wound into a lesson, every scar into a shield, every moment of pain into a weapon they'll never see coming. Because it doesn't look like rage, it looks like peace. It looks like indifference. It looks like you moved on. But you didn't move on. You moved up. You moved beyond. You moved into a frequency they can't even tune into anymore. And that's what's driving them insane. Not that you're angry, not that you're vengeful, but that you're thriving in a way that makes their victory look like the participation trophy it always was. Here's what they'll never admit out loud. They needed you to stay broken. They needed you to stay bitter, to stay stuck, to stay obsessed with what they did. Because as long as you were in pain, their narrative worked. As long as you were suffering, they could point to you as evidence that they made the right choice, that cutting you off was justified, that whatever they did was necessary. But the moment you started healing, the moment you started growing, the moment you started becoming this untouchable force of nature, their entire story fell apart. Suddenly, they weren't the heroes who escaped the toxic person. They were the cowards who abandoned someone going through transformation. Suddenly, they weren't the wise ones who saw through you. They were the blind ones who couldn't recognize greatness when it was standing right in front of them, raw and unpolished and begging for a chance to be seen. So yes, you let them win. You let them have their little victory lap. You let them celebrate. You let them think they got away with it. 'Cause you knew something they didn't. The only thing more satisfying than immediate revenge is patient vindication. Let's go deeper into the architecture of this 5-year masterpiece you've been building, because this wasn't random. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't you hiding or running away scared. This was calculated. This was chess while they were playing checkers. This was you understanding that the most powerful weapon in psychological warfare isn't the loudest voice, it's the most strategic silence. You disappeared, not because you had nothing to say, but because you had everything to prove, and you knew that words would never carry the weight that transformation would. You could have spent 5 years arguing, defending, explaining, trying to make them understand, but you didn't. You spent 5 years becoming undeniable instead, because explanations fade, results echo forever. Explanations fade, results echo forever. You let them construct an entire identity around being the person who got away from you. You let them build their confidence on the foundation of your absence. You let them tell the story of how they escaped, how they survived, how they're so much better now, and the whole time you were watching. Not obsessively, not desperately, but with the quiet awareness of a predator who knows exactly where the prey is at all times without needing to chase. You were the ghost in their peripheral vision, the thought that interrupted their celebrations, the name that made them scroll just a little bit faster when it appeared somewhere. They thought you were gone, but you were everywhere. In every moment of doubt they had about their new relationships, in every comparison they made without realizing they were making it, in every quiet moment when they wondered if they made the right choice. You didn't need to be physically present to occupy space in their consciousness. Your absence was louder than your presence ever was. And that was the first layer of the trap. Because by letting them think they won, you gave them permission to let their guard down. You gave them permission to stop watching their back. You gave them permission to believe the war was over. And that's when you started building the empire they're about to see. 5 years is long enough for people to forget the details of why they cut you off. 5 years is long enough for their narrative to get fuzzy, for the facts to blur into feelings, for the truth to get replaced by whatever story made them feel better about themselves. 5 years is long enough for them to stop being vigilant, to stop checking on you, to stop preparing for your return. They thought 5 years meant forever. They thought 5 years meant you'd moved on to a completely different life where they weren't even a memory. But here's what they didn't account for. Some people don't move on. Some people move through the pain, through the lessons, through the transformation, through the fire, until they emerge on the other side as something completely new. You didn't spend 5 years trying to forget them. You spent 5 years making sure you'd never forget what they taught you about human nature, about loyalty, about the masks people wear, about the difference between who someone pretends to be and who they reveal themselves to be when it costs them nothing to tell the truth. You studied every person who abandoned you like they were case studies. You examined every friend who went silent, every ally who switched sides, every person who smiled in your face while sharpening knives behind your back. And you didn't do this out of bitterness. You did this out of necessity, because once you understand the patterns, once you see the blueprint of betrayal, once you decode the language of manipulation, you become immune to it, not just from them, but from everyone. You built an internal detection system so sophisticated that you can smell dishonesty 3 conversations before it reveals itself. You developed an intuition so sharp that you know someone's true intentions before they fully form the thought themselves. You became a walking lie detector, a human bullshit scanner, a person who can read energy like a first language. And all of this happened in silence, in solitude, in those 5 years when they thought you were defeated. They thought you were licking your wounds. You were cataloging theirs. They thought you were hiding. You were studying. They thought you were broken. You were being rebuilt by something far stronger than their validation ever was. Here's the part that's going to hurt them the most when they finally figure it out. You didn't need 5 years to heal from them. You needed 5 years to make sure that when you came back as someone they could never hurt again. That's the difference between revenge and evolution. Revenge is reactive, immediate, emotional. Evolution is patient, calculated, permanent. You didn't want to hurt them back. You wanted to become someone they couldn't hurt at all. You wanted to reach a level of existence where their opinions, their judgments, their gossip, their little games became completely irrelevant. Not because you rose above it in some spiritual forgive and forget way, but because you evolved beyond it. You became a different species, and now when they look at you, they're not seeing the person they used to know. They're seeing something that doesn't even register in their understanding of reality. They're seeing someone who operates on frequencies they can't tune into, who speaks languages they never learned, who moves through life with a confidence that isn't arrogance, but simply the natural result of knowing exactly who you are and refusing to apologize for it anymore. There's a moment happening right now, in real time, in their lives, a moment where it's all starting to click, where the pieces are starting to fall into place, where they're beginning to realize that something is very, very wrong with their victory story. It started small, didn't it? A mutual friend mentioned seeing you somewhere, looking different, not broken, not struggling, different, put together, focused, glowing with something that doesn't come from external validation, but from internal revolution. Then someone else brought you up in a completely unrelated context, talking about something you accomplished, something you built, something you became. And suddenly, your name wasn't attached to the old stories anymore. It was attached to new ones, better ones, ones that didn't include them at all. That's when the first crack appeared in their narrative. Because if you're thriving, if you're successful, if you're happy, then what was the point of cutting you off? What exactly did they save themselves from? Then they made the mistake we both knew they would make. They looked, they checked, they scrolled, and what they found shattered the comfortable story they'd been telling themselves. They found someone who didn't look defeated. They found someone who didn't look angry. They found someone who looked free. genuinely, authentically, terrifyingly free. Free from needing them, free from needing anyone, free from the validation they thought was essential to your survival. And that freedom, that's what's keeping them up at night now. Because people can handle you being sad without them. They can handle you struggling. They can even handle you being angry. But they cannot handle you being better. They cannot handle you thriving. They cannot handle you looking like the best decision you ever made was letting them walk away. That's the moment when their victory starts tasting like ash in their mouths. That's the moment when they start questioning everything. That's the moment when your 5-year plan starts revealing itself, and they realize they've been playing a game where you've been 10 moves ahead the entire time. Now they're watching more carefully. Now they're paying attention. Now they're asking questions they don't really want the answers to. How did they do that? When did that happen? Who are these new people in their life? What have they been doing for 5 years? And every answer they get makes them more uncomfortable, because none of it fits the story they needed to believe. You were supposed to be stuck. You were supposed to be the cautionary tale. You were supposed to be the person they could point to and say, see what happens when you don't listen to us, when you don't follow our advice, when you go your own way. But instead, you became the evidence that their way wasn't the only way, that their truth wasn't the universal truth, that maybe, just maybe, they were wrong about you. And being wrong about you means being wrong about themselves. It means questioning every decision they made. It means wondering if the life they built while you were gone is actually the life they wanted, or just the life that felt safe because you weren't in it, challenging them anymore. Here's what's happening in their group chats, in their private conversations, in those late-night talks when defenses come down. Your name is coming up more and more. Not with anger, with something worse, with curiosity, with concern, with that creeping feeling that they made a massive mistake. Someone will say they saw something you posted, something you said, something you did, and there will be silence. The kind of silence that speaks louder than any words. The kind of silence that says we all feel it, but we're afraid to admit it because admitting it means confronting something we're not ready to face. They'll laugh it off, they'll make a joke, they'll dismiss it. But when they're alone, when they're lying in bed at night, when they're stuck in traffic, when they have those unguarded moments where the truth sneaks past their defenses, they're thinking about you. They're wondering. They're calculating. They're realizing that the person they wrote off might have just written the most incredible comeback story they'll ever witness, and they're not in it. The beautiful irony is that you're not even trying to prove anything to them anymore. You're not posting for their attention. You're not living for their validation. You're not making moves to make them regret anything. You're simply existing at a level that makes their old judgments look ridiculous. You're simply being yourself, fully, unapologetically, without the weight of their expectations or their limitation. And that authentic existence is more threatening to them than any revenge plot could ever be. Because revenge would give them permission to be victims again. Revenge would let them say, see, we were right to cut them off. Look how bitter they are. But success, happiness, peace, there's no defense against that. There's no narrative they can spin that makes them look good when you're clearly doing better without them than you ever did with them. That's the checkmate. That's the moment when 5 years of silence becomes the loudest statement you've ever made. That's when letting them win becomes the ultimate victory. Let's talk about what you actually built during those 5 years, because this is where the strategy becomes art. You didn't just improve yourself, you restructured your entire existence, from the foundation up. You didn't just heal wounds, you redesigned your mental architecture so that those same wounds could never be inflicted again. You didn't just move on, you moved into an entirely different dimension of being. While they were having surface-level conversations and maintaining surface-level relationships and living surface-level lives, you were going deep into philosophy, into psychology, into understanding human behavior at a level that makes you dangerous in the best possible way. You learned how people work, why they lie, what they fear, what makes them loyal. You became a student of human nature, while they remained actors in a script they didn't even know they were following. You built skills they didn't know you were building. You developed talents they didn't know existed. You created income streams they never imagined you could. You formed relationships with people who operate at frequencies they can't even comprehend. You didn't just level up, you changed games entirely. While they were playing the same old social hierarchy games, fighting for the same limited resources, competing for the same shallow victories, you found a completely different playing field where their rules don't apply, where their opinions don't matter, where their presence isn't required or desired. You built an empire in exile. You became royalty in a kingdom they don't even know exists. And the most beautiful part? You did it all without announcing it, without bragging about it, without needing them to witness it to make it real. You became dangerous because your validation doesn't come from external sources anymore. It comes from internal knowing, from walking your path with integrity, from keeping promises to yourself, from becoming the person you always knew you could be if everyone would just get out of your way. The money you made, the body you built, the mind you sharpened, the spirit you strengthened, the network you created, the opportunities you manifested. None of it was about proving them wrong. It was about proving yourself right, about validating the voice inside you that always said you were capable of more. You were meant for more. You were built for more. They tried to convince you that voice was delusion, that voice was ego, that voice was unrealistic expectation, but that voice was prophecy. And 5 years later, the prophecy has manifested. You're not who they said you were. You're exactly who you always knew you could become. And the gap between their limited perception of you and your actualized reality is so vast that they can't bridge it, they can't make sense of it, they can't reduce it to luck or timing or circumstances. They have to face the uncomfortable truth that maybe, just maybe, they were the anchor, they were the limitation, they were the thing holding you back. You know what else you built? Emotional immunity. Not apathy, not coldness, but immunity, the ability to feel everything deeply without letting it control you.